The explosion ripped through Captain Elias Drake's fighter craft with enough force to send it spiraling toward the uncharted planet below. Emergency alarms blared as the cabin filled with smoke, his navigation system flashing critical warnings across the cracked display. The alien vessel that had hit him was falling too, trailing fire as both ships plummeted through the atmosphere of Nexus 9, a world marked only as dangerous on stellar charts. Mayday, Mayday. This is Captain Drake of the Earth Alliance, requesting immediate extraction. Elias shouted into his comm, but only static answered. The battle raging in orbit had likely knocked out communication relays, leaving him completely alone. As his craft broke through cloud cover, Elias caught glimpses of a vast purple forest stretching to the horizon, interrupted by jagged mountain peaks. He fought with the controls, managing to level his descent enough that when he hit, crashing through canopy and slamming into soil, the impact didn't kill him outright. Consciousness faded in and out as Elias dragged himself from the wreckage, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. Military training took over, and he retrieved his survival pack, weapon, and emergency beacon before the flames engulfed what remained of his ship. The alien craft had crashed less than a kilometer away, its impact leaving a scorched trail through the strange vegetation. No survivors, Elias muttered to himself, limping toward a ridge for better visibility. Not after a crash like that. The alien warship had broken into several pieces, its sleek crystal-like hull shattered across the clearing. As Elias approached cautiously, weapon raised, he noticed movement among the debris. Someone, was alive. His finger tensed on the trigger as a figure emerged from the wreckage. She was clearly Australian, the species humanity had been fighting for control of the galaxy's border territories for the past 3 years. Her skin shimmered with an iridescent blue tint, and delicate, almost translucent fins framed her face where human ears would be. Her eyes, large and entirely violet without pupils, fixed on him with unmistakable intelligence. "Don't move," Elias commanded, aiming his pulse rifle at her chest. The Australian looked at him, then at his weapon, and said something in her native language, a series of melodic tones that sounded almost like song. When she saw he didn't understand, she touched a device at her throat and spoke again. "If you're going to kill me, human, do it quickly." Her voice came through the translator with surprising clarity. "I have no interest in prolonged suffering." Elias kept his weapon steady. "Are you military? Pilot?" "I am Talia, diplomatic envoy to the Southern Quadrant." She stood straighter despite an obvious injury to her leg. "And you are a soldier, here to claim this world for your kind." "I'm here because you shot me down," Elias replied sharply. "Your forces attacked our peaceful delegation," she countered. "We were responding in self-defense." Before Elias could argue further, a distant screech echoed through the forest. Both of them turned toward the sound, tension momentarily forgotten. The screech came again, closer this time, accompanied by the crashing of vegetation as something large moved through the trees. "We need to move," Talia said urgently. "The apex predators here hunt by sound and heat. Our crashes will draw them for kilometers." Elias hesitated, his military training warring with survival instinct. The Australian was the enemy, but she also appeared to know something about this planet that he didn't. "Why should I trust you?" he demanded, even as the sounds grew closer. Talia's violet eyes narrowed. "Because, human, neither of us will survive the night alone. This planet kills visitors efficiently. We can resume trying to kill each other after we've avoided being eaten." Another screech, close enough now that Elias could feel it vibrate through his chest. He made his decision, lowering his weapon slightly. "Lead the way," he said grimly. "But no, I'll be watching your every move." "As I will be watching yours," Talia replied, already moving toward higher ground. "I suggest we find shelter before nightfall. On Nexus 9, darkness brings horrors worse than our war." They moved into the strange forest together, enemies forced into an alliance neither wanted, but both desperately needed. Twilight fell over Nexus 9, bathing the alien landscape in an eerie crimson glow. Elias and Talia had found refuge in a small cave nestled within a rocky outcropping, just high enough to provide a defensive position against whatever might hunt them through the night. The distant howls of unknown creatures echoed through the valley below, sending shivers down Elias's spine despite his years of combat experience. "Those sounds," he muttered, checking the charge on his pulse rifle for the fourth time, "they're unlike anything I've ever heard." Talia sat across from him, applying a translucent gel from her survival kit to the wound on her leg. The substance seemed to merge with her skin, sealing the injury with a faint blue luminescence. "The Nexus planets were quarantined by ancient civilizations for good reason," she said, her voice melodic even through the translator. "The evolutionary path here took unusual directions. Most life forms developed both predatory and parasitic qualities." Elias raised an eyebrow. "You seem to know a lot about a planet that's supposedly uncharted." "Diplomatic envoys receive extensive briefings on all territories near contested space," she replied, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Knowledge is our primary defense." "While weapons are ours," Elias countered, though there was less hostility in his voice than before. The night grew colder as they sat in silence, each unwilling to fully trust the other yet unable to deny their mutual dependency. When Elias's stomach growled audibly, Talia reached into her pack and removed something that resembled a glowing fruit. "Here," she offered, extending her hand. "It's a nutrition sphere. My biology can process almost any carbon-based food source, but I suspect you need something more specific." Elias hesitated before accepting. "How do I know it's not poison? If I wanted you dead, Captain, I would have let the Vermilion stalkers find you hours ago." A hint of what might have been amusement flickered across her alien features. "Besides, poisoning a potential ally would be illogical given our circumstances." Hunger won over suspicion, and Elias took a cautious bite. The fruit tasted like a mixture of honey and citrus, instantly soothing his parched throat. Energy seemed to flow through his limbs, easing the ache of injuries sustained in the crash. "Thank you," he said grudgingly. "It's good. Your surprise is quite telling about what your people think of mine," Talia observed, her voice softer now. "Do humans truly believe we are nothing but warriors bent on conquest? Aren't you?" Elias responded, though the question lacked conviction. "Your forces attacked our colonies without warning. Is that what your leaders told you?" Talia's eyes, those strange, pupilless violet orbs, seemed to look through him rather than at him. "Our histories may differ substantially on who fired the first shot." A particularly loud screech from outside interrupted their conversation, followed by the sounds of something large moving near the cave entrance. Both instantly fell silent, weapons ready. Elias could feel his heart hammering in his chest as shadows shifted across the opening. Whatever stalked them lingered for several agonizing minutes before moving on, its heavy footfalls gradually fading into the distance. Only then did Elias realize he'd instinctively positioned himself between the entrance and Talia. "Interesting," she said quietly, noticing his protective stance. "Your instinct wasn't solely self-preservation." Elias returned to his position, embarrassed. "Military training. Protect civilians, even." He trailed off. "Even alien ones?" Talia finished for him. "Perhaps there's hope for you yet, Captain Drake." The admission of his name startled him. "I don't recall introducing myself." "Your ship's designation was visible during the battle," she explained. "And I make it a point to know my companions." As the alien night deepened around them, they began to share stories, cautiously at first, then with increasing openness. Elias spoke of Earth's sprawling underwater cities and the mountains where he'd grown up. Talia described her home world's floating crystal forests and the bioluminescent oceans that inspired her people's architecture. "We're not so different," Elias found himself saying as exhaustion began to overtake him. "Not where it counts. The difference is in what we choose to see in others," Talia replied, her voice fading as sleep claimed her as well. "And what we're taught to fear." In the darkness, their breathing fell into synchrony, enemies at war finding momentary peace under alien stars. Outside, Nexus 9 teemed with dangers that would make no distinction between human or Australian, a harsh reality that would continue to forge their unlikely bond with each passing day. 3 weeks had passed since the crash, and the makeshift shelter Elias and Talia had constructed at the base of a massive purple leaf tree had begun to feel almost like home. Using salvaged parts from both ships, they'd created a relatively safe haven against Nexus 9's dangers. More importantly, the initial wariness between them had given way to something neither had expected: genuine connection. Elias watched as Talia expertly wove local plant fibers into a net for catching the small, fish-like creatures that populated the nearby stream. Her movements were graceful, almost hypnotic, her iridescent skin catching the sunlight filtering through the canopy. "You're staring again, Captain," she said without looking up, amusement coloring her voice. "Just admiring your technique," Elias replied, smiling despite himself. "My attempts look like something a child would make." "Your strengths lie elsewhere," Talia observed. "Without your defensive perimeter, we would have been devoured within days." Their mutual appreciation had developed naturally as they learned to rely on each other's unique abilities. Elias's combat training had saved them twice from the planet's apex predators, while Talia's xenobiological knowledge had prevented them from consuming poisonous flora and fauna. That evening, as they sat beside their fire sharing a meal of roasted local vegetation and small aquatic creatures, Talia grew uncharacteristically quiet. "There's something I haven't told you," she finally said, her voice barely audible above the crackling flames. "Something you should know." Elias set down his makeshift plate, sensing the weight of her words. "I'm listening. I am not merely a diplomatic envoy." Talia's violet eyes reflected the firelight as she looked directly at him. "I am Talia Valsarin, 9th successor to the Australian High Communion. My mission was to negotiate peace before the war escalated further." It took Elias a moment to process her words. "Your royalty? A princess? Our leadership structure doesn't translate perfectly to human terms, but yes, that approximation suffices." She looked away. "My capture or death would be a significant victory for your military command." "Is that why you didn't tell me?" Elias asked, surprised to find he felt no urge to exploit this information. "Initially, yes." Talia's fins rippled slightly, a gesture he'd come to recognize as vulnerability. "Later, it was because I didn't want it to change this." She gestured between them. Elias moved closer, tentatively reaching for her hand. Her skin felt cool against his, with a subtle electric quality that sent a pleasant shiver up his arm. "Nothing changes," he said firmly. "Not for me. We're beyond that now." When their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of feelings that had grown despite every reason they shouldn't have. The kiss that followed seemed inevitable, a natural culmination of their journey from enemies to survivors to something far more profound. That night, as they lay together beneath the alien stars, Talia shared the truth about the war. Her people possessed a technology that could revolutionize interstellar travel, eliminating the need for the limited jump points both species fought to control. Her mission had been to propose sharing this technology, until extremist factions on both sides sabotaged the peace talks. "I carry the complete schematics," she whispered against his chest. "Encrypted in a biotechnology implant that only I can access. If I could reach either of our leaders, this war could end." Elias held her tighter, understanding the magnitude of what she had revealed. "Then we need to get you off this planet. Not as enemies, not as survivors, but together." "Together," Talia echoed, the word carrying a promise neither had expected to make. Neither noticed the faint blinking light on Elias's long-forgotten emergency beacon, signaling that someone, somewhere, had finally received their distress call. The Earth Alliance rescue shuttle descended through Nexus 9's atmosphere with military precision, touching down in the clearing where Elias and Talia had positioned the emergency beacon. After 2 months of survival and growing love, the sight of human technology should have brought Elias nothing but relief. Instead, he felt a knot forming in his stomach. "Remember the plan," he whispered to Talia, who stood partially concealed behind the dense foliage. "Stay hidden until I assess their intentions. If anything seems wrong, I'll retreat to our contingency location," she finished, briefly pressing her forehead against his in the Australian gesture of affection they now shared. "Be careful, Elias." As the shuttle's doors opened and 3 armed soldiers emerged, Elias stepped forward, hands raised in the universal gesture of non-aggression. He recognized the insignia of Admiral Voorhees's fleet, one of the more aggressive commanders in the war effort. "Captain Elias Drake, Earth Alliance Special Operations," he called out. "Damn good to see friendly faces." The soldiers lowered their weapons slightly, and one stepped forward. "Lieutenant Commander Wexler, sir. We've been searching for you for weeks. Are you injured?" "Nothing serious," Elias replied, maintaining a casual demeanor despite his racing heart. "Just eager to get back to civilization." As they guided him toward the shuttle, Wexler spoke into his comm unit. "Primary target secured. Continue search pattern for secondary objective." The words sent ice through Elias's veins. They knew about Talia. Inside the shuttle, Elias was greeted by a stern-faced officer wearing Intelligence Division insignia. "Captain Drake, I'm Major Lin with Strategic Intelligence. We need to debrief you immediately regarding the Australian diplomat believed to have crashed in this vicinity." "Diplomat?" Elias feigned confusion. "I've been fighting to survive alone. If there was an alien ship, I never found it." Lin's eyes narrowed. "Our scans show 2 distinct camp locations, Captain. And your emergency beacon was activated using an energy signature consistent with Australian technology." Elias maintained his composure, though internally he cursed their carelessness. "I salvaged what I could from both crash sites. Using alien tech to save my life didn't seem treasonous at the time." "No one's suggesting treason, Captain," Lin said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But our intelligence indicates this particular Australian is high value, possibly royalty. Finding her could end this war on our terms." The way he emphasized "our terms" made Elias's decision crystallize. These people didn't want peace, they wanted leverage for total victory. "I'll help you search," Elias offered, his mind already calculating how to warn Talia. "I know this terrain better than anyone." For the next hour, Elias led the search team deliberately away from Talia's hiding place, all while gathering crucial information. The war had escalated. Earth forces had suffered heavy losses. Admiral Voorhees had ordered Talia captured at any cost, alive if possible, but recovery of her neural data was the primary objective. They meant to kill her and extract the peace technology by force. As night fell and the search team regrouped at the shuttle, Elias made his move. Using the night vision goggles they'd provided him, he slipped away from camp, ostensibly to check a location he claimed to have seen unusual activity. Instead, he raced toward their contingency meeting point, his heart pounding with each step. When he found Talia waiting, relief washed over him. "They know who you are," he said breathlessly. "They're not here for rescue, they want the technology you carry. We need to move now." Talia's expression grew solemn. "You're betraying your people for me." "I'm choosing peace over victory," Elias corrected, taking her hand. "I'm choosing us over them versus us." The sound of pursuit reached them, the search team had discovered his deception. With no time to lose, they fled deeper into the wilderness, their intimate knowledge of Nexus 9's dangers now their greatest advantage. "There's another way off this planet," Talia revealed as they ran. "An ancient transportation network my people discovered in preliminary surveys. If we can reach the mountains by dawn, we might escape together." As the sounds of their pursuers faded behind them, Elias made a vow, not just to Talia, but to the future they now fought for together. What had begun as survival had become something far greater, a mission to end a war neither of them believed in anymore. The ancient transportation device hummed with energy as Elias and Talia made final adjustments. Located deep within Nexus 9's northern mountains, the alien technology predated both their civilizations, a remnant of whoever had first quarantined this dangerous world. "The coordinates are set for the neutral trading station in the Procyon system," Talia explained, her fingers dancing across crystalline controls that responded to her touch. "From there, we can reach my homeworld without passing through contested space." Elias glanced back toward the cave entrance, where he'd set traps to slow the Earth Alliance forces still pursuing them. "Will your people even listen to a human? Or will they just shoot me on sight?" Talia paused, her violet eyes finding his. "They will listen because I will make them listen. My position grants me that much authority, at least." She touched his face gently. "What we found together is proof that our species can do more than fight." The transport device pulsed with increasing intensity, indicating readiness. As they stepped onto the platform together, a distant explosion signaled that their pursuers had triggered one of Elias's traps. "Now or never," he said, squeezing her hand. Light engulfed them, and the hostile world of Nexus 9 dissolved around them. The journey to the Australian homeworld of Celestis was fraught with challenges. At the trading station, they narrowly avoided Earth Alliance agents. Aboard a merchant vessel, they hid their identities beneath cloaks and false documentation. Yet through it all, their resolve only strengthened. When they finally stood before the Australian High Communion, a council of 12 leaders whose iridescent skin shimmered with age and wisdom, Elias felt both awe and determination. The grand crystal chamber, with its soaring arches and bioluminescent accents, reinforced how alien this world was to him, and yet, looking at Talia, he felt only belonging. "Successor Valsaren returns with grave news," announced the eldest council member, and an unexpected companion. Talia stepped forward, her royal bearing now evident in every movement. "Honored Communion, I present Captain Elias Drake of Earth. He has saved my life countless times and helped me return with the negotiation protocols intact. More importantly, he stands as living proof that humans and Australians can not only coexist but form bonds of genuine understanding." Murmurs rippled through the assembly as Elias felt dozens of violet eyes assessing him. "And why should we trust the word of a human soldier?" challenged one council member. "His kind has shown only aggression since first contact." Elias met the alien's gaze steadily. "Because I stand before you unarmed, by choice. Because I betrayed my own military to prevent them from killing your successor for technology they didn't understand. Because on Nexus 9, I learned that the differences between us matter far less than what we share." For hours, they presented their case, the truth about extremists on both sides sabotaging peace efforts, the technology that could render the war pointless, and their vision for cooperation rather than conquest. When a direct communication channel to Earth's leadership was finally established, Elias faced his greatest challenge, convincing his own people to listen. To his surprise, the military failures of recent months had weakened the war faction's position. Admiral Voorhees had been relieved of command, and moderate voices now sought an alternative to endless conflict. 3 months later, Elias stood beside Talia on the observation deck of a newly constructed space station orbiting the neutral world of Procyon 4. Below them, delegations from both species gathered for the formal signing of what the media was calling the Nexus Accords. "They're calling us heroes now," Elias said with a hint of irony. "The same people who would have executed me for treason not long ago." History is written by the survivors, Talia replied, leaning against him, and sometimes, reshaped by lovers. The station's artificial gravity subtly shifted as it rotated, offering a new view of the stars that had once separated their worlds but now connected them. The same stars they had gazed upon from Nexus 9, where enemies had become allies, and allies had become something so much more. What happens now? Elias asked, his arm encircling her waist. After peace is official? Talia's fins rippled with contentment, a gesture he now recognized as happiness. Now we build something new. A bridge between worlds. Together. As dignitaries from both species filed into the ceremonial chamber below, Elias and Talia shared a kiss, a promise more binding than any treaty, forged in adversity and sealed with love that had crossed the boundaries of worlds. In the vastness of space, two civilizations took their first steps toward understanding, guided by the most unlikely of ambassadors, a soldier and a princess who had found in each other the courage to imagine a different future among the stars.